Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about A Silent Voice from 2017. And this is a winner of my Patreon movie review vote. If you would like for me to review a movie of your choice, then click on the link below and pledge, and maybe I'll be reviewing your movie next month. And this was actually picked by Rachel Wagner, who is a really cool person and has a really cool Twitter account and YouTube. I'll have those linked below in the description, and there'll be a card right here. You should check out Rachel Reviews. It's a really good YouTube channel, and she wanted me to review this. So this film is effectively talking about 6th grade. It's talking about a specific trauma of a specific 6th grade in specifically Japan. However, I think with the kind of trauma of middle school in itself, and specifically 6th grade is like a rough grade no matter what school you put it in. For me, that was middle school. I know for other people in other states, that's elementary school in other countries or whatever. But effectively, 6th grade is how they refer to it, and that's kind of the idea that I took from it. I'm not sure how old they were supposed to be in that, but that's kind of the idea I got. Is that that's a really horrible time. I sort of get grappling with that as a teenager when you have a little more self-awareness and you've had a little more experience. You kind of are more aware of the crap things you did, the crap situations other people put you in, and the awkwardness of the whole idea. It's a rough time, and I sort of think a lot of that is dealing with that trauma and dealing with these people who you're still probably stuck with. A lot of them, unless you move away or something, if you stay in the same town like I did growing up, you're still with those same people, and so you kind of have to deal with the fact that you have evolved and grown, but you were maybe a shithead when you were in middle school. In some ways, I internalized this film very personally. In other ways, I didn't really bully people to that extent. You know, everyone made fun of someone and did something shitty, and I'm sure I did that to certain people, but not as antagonistic as this character did. I never did anything like that. That relationship is interesting because in some ways, you could probably make this film without her and still probably say a lot of the same things about that time period. But because of her being there, it kind of, because basically what happens is there's like this 6th grade class, and then one day this girl comes to school and she can't hear, and she's only communicating through a notebook at first, but they're also trying to have the class learn sign language so they can properly communicate with her, which this is probably me being a parent in that I was kind of like, actually, sign language is a really useful skill, kids, so you should probably just learn. They're giving you free sign language lessons. You know, I would be the parent who go, I mean, I'll show up for like, they're just going to do 3 minutes a day. I don't know. It wasn't going to be great. But they're trying to make her fit in, but clearly these kids at first are nice, but then start to tease her, and obviously it is different to communicate with someone with a notebook, and they try to help her, but this one kid, Ishida, is particularly mean to her. He keeps teasing her. He steals her earpieces or hearing aids, which are very expensive, and he keeps messing with her, and then eventually her parents kind of like pull her out of the school, and since the school kind of like confronts this whole class and makes them sort of deal with the trauma of that, they sort of mostly blame him and ostracize him because of it. And then he just doesn't fit in. He's depressed. They animate everyone with an X on their face. I thought a little similar to what they did in Anomalisa with everyone having the same voice, because he doesn't really look at anyone in the eyes. He doesn't really connect with anyone. The only time the X goes off of them is if they make some sort of a connection to him or speak to him or something like that. And there's a lot of shots of him looking down at people's feet. I can definitely relate to that because I probably still do that too much, but definitely when I was a teenager, I did that a lot. I just looked down at people's feet a lot because you didn't really want to look up because you knew they were going to say something crap to you and you didn't fit in. And those aspects of this film are incredibly strong. In some ways, it's a really good teen film because it talks about something a lot of films who try to cover this would maybe come out overly preachy, but I think in A Silent Voice, they're not coming out overly preachy. They're talking about like, these are things you need to grow past and deal with your past trauma and grow from them. And I think they're all having a hard time with that because they all are kind of like stuck by that, and that they're not perfect people. One of the girls is very much not who they reconnect with, and I was like, man, she is really the worst. But he tries to reconnect with this one, the girl who can't hear, after he's older, to first kind of apologize after a not botched, but like he doesn't, I don't know if it's a failed suicide attempt or just chose not to do it, and then he goes to see her to kind of deal with his feelings. And this is kind of him, you know, instead of killing himself, learns to deal with what he did and who he was. I think that's very healthy. It's interesting he went from one extreme, which was to completely not deal with it and end his life, to the other extreme, which was actually completely deal with it and change himself. So, but teenagers are very extreme, so I guess that makes sense, or so they say. I do think this film was like ridiculously too long. It felt like I watched like 7 episodes of an anime and like binge them or something, and because certain characters would come in and come out and things like that. I am of two minds of that, in which I will say in some cases with this film it sort of slogs along and then brings itself back and then slogs. It's like a twisting turning of, you're like, it never really gets that bad, but you're like, the flow of it is a little weird. I know it's based on a manga. I don't know like how that came out or anything, but this felt very episodic in a lot of ways. You could probably cut this up into a series if you wanted to. It does get the concept of growing up with a certain amount of people and growing up with how you've changed and how you used to be kind of maybe a shitty kid, and how as a kid you learn about social interactions and your emotions and how to deal with your emotions and how to deal with certain things and growing through them and growing with them. And I think A Silent Voice does that actually really well, and showing that length amount of time and having all these different characters and people get wrapped up in these things and things like that. I've noticed people have big emotional reaction to this film. I don't know if I necessarily did. It feels like it does one thing that I don't hate happy endings or anything. I review movies, so I'd have to sort of get used to that at a certain point. But A Silent Voice has the kind of thing where he suddenly, towards the end, he like is seemingly almost like cured or something. I kind of didn't like that, because it's like very slice of life, very much realistically sort of dealing with these things, maybe being a little melodramatic in the plot points to like get you there sooner and having you deal with these things faster than maybe most people would. But to act like he's suddenly like maybe better from it and is going to just evolve past it, I don't know if that's necessarily how people work, and I don't know if that's how I don't really agree with that's how depression works either. It's like an ongoing kind of struggle for a lot of people. But I think a lot of what it does with dealing with him and his relationship with that girl, I think is really interesting, because it's an interesting love story in that it deals mainly with him, but the main reason you don't deal with her is because she is not really speaking towards like the time where the film, interestingly enough, is knowing her more. Suddenly she has more of a voice, which is maybe a metaphor they were going for, maybe not. I did feel like I don't really know her as well as the other characters in some cases. In other ways I feel like I do. I feel very attached to her. They give her a very angelic quality. I'm sure there's issues about how she is viewed being the main love interest in this film. I thought this was a good movie. I don't know if I freak out as much about a lot of slice of life anime as most people. I see a lot of like big indie dramas and things like that, and although I thought the animation was good in this and I appreciated the design, and I feel like this is probably appeals to similar people with Your Name. I've noticed in reviews this gets brought up with Your Name, I guess because it's 2 teens. I probably liked Your Name a little more than A Silent Voice, although neither I'm like, they're not huge big movies for me personally, and I don't know if filmmaking wise I think they're like huge moments or anything like that. But I will say that both times I watched them, I really enjoyed these films. I really liked what they were saying and liked how they're doing teen movies. And as much as I think like American teen films are kind of stuck in this like, well, we do a rom-com, or I don't know, this other kind of thing we've already done before, we're cast in the shadow of John Hughes or whatever. It feels like anime about slice of life teenage dramas are totally doing their own thing, which I absolutely love. I'm sure most teens, to be honest, are more watching in America and in all over the world, are more watching this and Your Name than have any interest in watching anything that's going on with American stuff. And I think it's because when you watch A Silent Voice, you feel like you're watching something that speaks to a slice of reality. Like I can immediately know that kind of emotion, what it's talking about, but it's not moving in sort of cliches. It might be moving in anime slice of life cliches, which I'm not as aware of, frankly, but when it's like freeing itself from the cliches that, you know, we know as Americans, but also speaking to a very specific thing. Like if you had bullied someone and you have become a better person, you do kind of feel very guilty about it. I think you'd relate to this quite a lot, but also dealing with the fact that moving on from middle school and all of that trauma. And it did feel like this was an ongoing series. I mean, I as much as they have like kind of a button on it or whatever, I did sort of feel like this could just keep going indefinitely. It didn't feel like a kind of capped off story, which in some ways I sort of liked, because a slice of life, you know, life is always moving and always changing in something. So if it is a slice of life, there is going to be more of that pie. I enjoyed that in terms of maybe a conceptual level. I thought that was really smart. But I really like this film, but I think it is sort of, for me, with Your Name, where it's like a really good kind of original kind of teen drama that we definitely need I don't know if it's this huge, big moment kind of movie for me, or I don't know if it's like, I'm not as passionate about it. I don't feel that passionate. I don't feel like the filmmaking or storytelling is as impassioned for me as most people, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's a bad movie. I think it's a good movie, and when I was watching, I was thinking of like, I could see why these films have more mainstream appeal. I can see like friends I have who are more into less animated fare watching this and, getting more emotional about it and getting more into it. And I think if anything, that's probably better for animation. And in that way, in the emotional way, and the way it tells its story, I think A Silent Voice is amazingly strong because it's speaking to a truth that very few things are really saying. And I think what this film is trying to say is a thing that we often don't get to say. And really, I guess that was the whole point of the thing anyway. So if you have seen A Silent Voice and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And again, this was the winner of the Patreon movie review vote. If you would like for me to review a movie of your choice, then click on the link below and pledge, and maybe I'll be reviewing your movie next month. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.